Okay, let's be real for a second. Are you actually prepared for South Africa's strict new employment equity compliance rules? Because whether you're running a lean, fast-moving startup or managing a massive manufacturing plant, the landscape has completely shifted under our feet. If your business isn't entirely up to speed right now, the stakes are incredibly high. We're talking everything from devastating, drawn-out disputes at the CCMA to just losing out entirely on lucrative state contracts. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're breaking down exactly what these updated regulations mean for your operational survival, drawing directly on the latest guidance from VCA Consulting.
Okay, let's dive right into this procedural survival guide. First, we'll cover the trigger, then the workforce analysis, building your 5-year plan, hitting those annual reporting deadlines, and finally, untangling EE versus BBBE. Starting with Section 1, the compliance trigger. Basically, are you a designated employer?
So, are you a designated employer under these new rules? I'm asking you this directly because it's wild how many businesses out there just wrongly assume they're entirely exempt. They're relying on old advice, outdated thresholds, or, honestly, they're just hoping they fly under the radar. But let me tell you, the legal definition has been drastically simplified, and ignoring it is a massive, massive risk.
It all comes down to this magic number right here, 50. The starting point for compliance is now just a simple head count. If your business carries 50 or more employees on its books, well, congratulations, you are automatically a designated employer under the Employment Equity Framework. A smaller tech startup in Sandton with 80 staff meets this threshold just as readily as a giant manufacturer out in Midrand.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the stark contrast between the old rules and our current reality. Before 2025, the test looked at your headcount or your financial turnover, and that caused a ton of confusion. Today, turnover no longer plays a role whatsoever. It is headcount only. You literally cannot rely on outdated assumptions about your company's revenue to shield you from compliance anymore. If you hit 50 heads, you're in.
Actually, scratch that. There's one major exception, where that 50 headcount rule just gets thrown completely out the window. If you are a state contractor, the rules change. If you're bidding for government work, particularly in Gauteng, you absolutely need a valid employment equity compliance certificate regardless of how many staff you have. No certificate, no contract award, and firms often discover this requirement right as a tender is closing, which leaves them absolutely zero room to fix the gaps before submission. It's a nightmare you want to avoid.
So, once that trigger is pulled and you're officially designated, your compliance rests on these 4 pillars. You need a documented workforce analysis, a solid 5-year plan, strict alignment with sector targets, and of course, annual reporting to the Department of Employment and Labor. This is your clear visual map for the journey ahead. Moving on to Section 2, the workforce analysis. This is your very first practical step. This is where you actually audit your recruitment, promotion, and retention policies against the real demographic profile of your workforce. It's the foundation for everything else. And please listen closely here. Generic, downloaded templates will absolutely fall short. A retail group operating across Gauteng needs a completely different occupational breakdown than an East Rand logistics firm running warehouses. You can't just cram your business into a copy-pasted spreadsheet. Your analysis has to honestly reflect your specific reality, from unskilled roles all the way up to top management.
Which brings us to Section 3, the 5-year blueprint and aligning with sector targets. Let's look at how this builds out, because this area has seen major regulatory changes since April 2025. You have to build an actual plan that aligns with strict numerical targets set across 18 national economic sectors. The specific 5-year window we are in runs from September 1, 2025, right through to August 31, 2030. Progress toward these sector targets, along with current economically active population data, literally dictates the annual goals you have to set. It's not a guessing game anymore. Oh, and here is a critical rule change that you absolutely cannot miss. The minimum representation target for employees with disabilities, it just jumped up from 2% to 3% across every single sector. Plus, the legal definition of disability was broadened to cover long-term or recurring impairments that limit entry or advancement in a job. So if you're sitting on an older plan drafted before this change, you need to revisit it right now. Do not just file it away assuming you're covered. So, where do employers usually stumble when they try to do this alone? A huge pitfall is skipping meaningful consultation with employees and trade unions. Treating that engagement like a mere box-ticking exercise is exactly what ends up dragging businesses to the CCMA when a dispute blows up. This is exactly where expert consultants step in. They facilitate the real, proper engagement, they conduct the baseline audits, and they review your recruitment pipelines so you actually have a shot at hitting that new 3% disability target.
Now for Section 4, Annual reporting deadlines, otherwise known as the submission window.
Because doing the work is really only half the battle, right? You also have to formally prove your compliance to the department during a very strict window. Every year, you have to submit your updates through their online portal. That portal opens on September 1st and slams shut on January 15th. Missing this window or submitting data that doesn't perfectly match the workforce analysis you have on file guarantees closer scrutiny and directly exposes you to having your compliance certificate outright refused.
I really want to stress the sheer urgency of the upcoming 2026 reporting cycle. It is a game changer. Why? Because 2026 is the very first time your actual progress is going to be measured directly against those new governmental sector targets. You are no longer being graded against a self-set baseline. The standard is national, it's mandatory, and they are watching closely.
Finally, let's hit Section 5, Employment Equity versus BBBE, and where the two actually overlap. And this brilliantly illustrates a massive source of confusion we see all the time. Far too many employers are conflating their employment equity requirements with their BBBE scorecards. Guys, they are not the same obligation. Here's the critical distinction. You can score phenomenally well on one framework and completely fail the other. Employment equity is laser-focused on your specific workforce demographic representation. BBBE measures broad-based transformation.
Let's look at the definition of BBE just to make this crystal clear. It has a much wider scope. It's looking at ownership, management control, skills development, and enterprise development. It's a holistic, big-picture look at economic transformation in your business, whereas the Employment Equity Act strictly cares about the headcount, the occupational levels, and the exact demographic makeup of the people in your building.
But, and this is a really big but, accurate workforce data feeds both of these processes. Recent amendments, especially the 2026 BEE changes, mean that employment equity and BBEE data now overlap heavily. This is particularly true when it comes to your enterprise and supplier development scorecard. This intersection is exactly why your data needs to be flawlessly accurate across the board. You can't have one set of numbers for EE and another for BEE. Which is why there's immense value in treating all of this as one coordinated ecosystem. When businesses silo HR, payroll, skills development, and equity into disconnected projects, their data gets completely out of sync. By managing these as connected work streams, you ensure your consulting outputs perfectly match your reporting figures. You can even protect yourself from disputes by bringing in independent hearing chairpersons for any equity-linked disciplinary decisions. It's just smart business.
So, the crucial point is this. Employment equity compliance is absolutely no longer a generic box-ticking exercise where you can just download a template from 2018 and hope for the best. It is a precise, data-driven legal requirement. Getting this right is quite literally about your operational survival, ensuring you can legally keep bidding for work and stay afloat in today's economy.
I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. Take a hard look at your current setup and ask yourself, is your workforce data truly ready to withstand the intense scrutiny of the 2026 sector targets, or are you, right at this very moment, risking your next major state contract simply because you haven't done the math yet? Seriously, don't wait until that reporting portal is closing to find out. Take action, seek out expert evaluation, and get your compliance fully on track.